Welcome to Brewsers, a podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I am your host, Rody John, and today we talk to Karen Tran about how she got into pro wrestling, her love for jiu-jitsu, and so much more. You can also catch Karen on WOW, that is Women of Wrestling, as Exodus. Definitely go and check that out. They are going to be doing some great live events in Los Angeles, I believe next month sometime. So definitely check out WOW. It is such a great show for women's wrestling. And, more wrestling, the better, I think. So even if you've never seen it, go check it out. They've got great episodic situations going on that show. So definitely check out WOW. But also check out Karen Tran in our interview here in a second. But first, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. It comes out twice a week. You get even more information on our guest, find out more about what we got going on the show, and even some fun facts. So definitely make sure to sign up for the newsletter for your favorite podcast all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. And without further ado, here is Karen Tran.
I would like to welcome to the show Karen Tran. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I am doing just dandy. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, what is your earliest memory of pro wrestling?
My earliest memory of pro wrestling would have to be, pretty mainstream, just Hogan, WWF in the, 90s. To be honest, it didn't really captivate me that much at the time. And it was only when I sort of got into my adult years where I really appreciated what professional wrestling really embodied, and what it meant to me. So, as a kid, I wasn't, I wasn't that drawn to it, funnily enough. But, so that would have to be my earliest memory, and it's a pretty vague and non-specific memory. So sorry, I can't be more detailed than that.
No, that's your earliest memory. So it's totally fine. Well, also, What is your earliest memory of martial arts?
My earliest memory of martial arts would have to be watching really old Chinese kung fu movies with my family, with my brother, and just, the really terrible audio dubs and just, that great filmic quality that added to all the action, the grainy film that they shot on, just the sound effects. But, I'm my ethnicity is Chinese, but I don't actually speak much Chinese at all, so I couldn't really understand much of it. But I could understand the language of fighting and of kung fu and of just kung fu action, So I just that's what made me fall in love with it, to be honest. It was actually kind of a long journey to get from there to actually becoming a martial artist, because my mum would see how obsessed I was with it, and she would always be like, you can't do anything like that. You're way too clumsy. I don't want you involved in any kind of physical activity like that. So again, I had to wait till I was more of an adult to actually pursue the things that I was passionate about. So yeah.
That's hilarious. I mean, it's so funny you say that, because martial arts and fighting is a universal language because of the fact that we all, at some point in our life, have to face some kind of struggle, and it's, how you are going to overcome that, or how you're going to, fight it and move past that. And then, a lot of people, hopefully, will not be in an actual physical altercation in their life. However, they've seen enough of them so that they know what it is like. And so watching other people do it, you can kind of feel their struggle and their pain when you're watching, and whenever they do prevail over the bad person, that it feels that much better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always said, to any of my classes that I teach, or any of my students, that, the whole goal of learning a fighting art or learning martial arts is to actually not be able to not need to use it, not be able to use it, and that you can utilize it, but the goal is not to actually have to get to that point, you know? It's more than just, I mean, the physicality of it is obviously amazing, but like it's for me, it's like definitely so much deeper than that. And then, you know, obviously relating it back to the, you know, the storytelling aspect of it, you know, the struggle of good versus evil. It's just like, you know, that is like a common language across, you know, across cultures and languages and people. And that's just what makes it so amazing to me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like it's such a universal language, and storytelling is, even if you aren't part of that culture, you can understand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the universal language of it all. So
absolutely.
Now, you mentioned that you're Chinese heritage, but you also have, you're from Australia. So I imagine when some people maybe come up to you and haven't heard you talk before, it might be a little disarming for them because they're like, whoa, wait a minute. I didn't imagine this voice to come out of this person. So you were born in Australia, and how long was it until you left Australia?
So pretty much, all my adult life, I was born in Sydney, Australia, and I went to school there. I went to college there. And, after I'd been working for a few years in my career, I was offered a job opportunity in LA. So, you know, I'd lived a whole good portion of my life in Australia before I'd moved here. So I haven't, you know, in the scheme of things, I haven't lived in America that long, or like, you know, in comparison to, you know, how long I lived in Australia. But, you know, I pretty much, like, I'm very much here now. So, but I do go back to Australia. You know, I try and go back at least once, you know, every year or so. That was obviously before the pandemic. The pandemic kind of put things into, you know, a bit of a tailspin, and like, I was actually able to go back for the first time in 4 years, like earlier this year. And, you know, it was pretty crazy. But, you know, all my family's still there. All my parents, my brother, all my, you know, aunts and uncles, cousins, everything. And, you know, a good portion of my good friends are still there. So, you know, that still very much is home for me. But, you know, I, you know, have very much settled here as well. So, yeah, it's a weird feeling for sure.
No, I mean, that's amazing that you know, are still, it does suck. I didn't think about it. It must have been 4 years that you hadn't been home. And we all love watching those videos of people reunited after however many years or however long it is. And I imagine, you know, that was a real life thing for you that you were going through. How was that for you, not being, I mean, obviously you're able to contact your family, but not able to see them face to face, you know, hold their hands, give them a hug, you know, what was that struggle like for you?
I mean, it was, you know, I'm not going to lie, it was, I think, for, you know, speaking probably for a lot of people, like the pandemic was, you know, very hard on just, you know, people's lives in general, and, you know, me included. I went through a lot of like life changes and stuff, but also, you know, my family going through a lot of life things. Like my brother had, in that course of like, you know, the pandemic years, had gotten engaged and had a baby, and like I wasn't able to be there for any of it. And, you know, just to be so removed from that, it was, you know, it was really hard. It took a toll on me, like emotionally and mentally as well. But, you know, I feel like, there's not really a, you know, a timeline for, you know, anyone to heal from like traumatic things. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that I'd gone through, not having my family there, it kind of added to the length of time it took me to get over a lot of things. And, you know, not saying that I've gotten over it all completely, but I've definitely, you know, been able to work through a lot of it, you know, since that time. But yeah, it was definitely a very trying time for me and, you know, for a lot of people. But, I do believe, as cliched as it sounds, you know, it does, make a lot of us, open our eyes to what our potentials could be, as opposed to living in things that, you know, as opposed to living in a what if kind of world, you know.
Yeah, I really hope that a lot of people looked at what happened during the pandemic and was like, oh, I need to start living more this way of, you know, what's important to me in my life as opposed to what they think is important on the social media or what they're getting told is more important to them than, you know, other things. And I just really hope that a lot of people take that mindset and just continue it on with the rest of their life.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think for the most part, you know, people that I've spoken to have definitely had that, frame of mind and have been, you know, sort of open-minded about this, you know, whole big traumatic thing that we all basically collectively went through as, you know, just as, you know, all of us. And, you know, you know, it's happened and you just kind of see it for what it is and how we can learn and grow from it pretty much. But that's all we can really do, I guess.
Hopefully that is what people could do is just learn from it and continue on with their lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you finally decided to make the leap to pro wrestling, what was it that you were like, all right, I'm going to try this, I'm going to give it a shot, I actually want to do this? Because, I mean, as you were saying, your first memory of pro wrestling is kind of vague and it didn't really grab you. When did it, I guess, actually grab you enough to where you wanted to try it?
You know, I guess I would have to say, the moment that I realized that pro wrestling was something that I wanted to get into was when I was appreciating and let me rephrase that. When I started watching, basically when I started watching New Japan Pro Wrestling and it was that idea that this arena could hold both a performative aspect as well as an athletic aspect, as well as a combat aspect, you know. All of those things combined kind of touch different points of like my life and what, like who I am as, you know, as a person. And when I saw all that sort of just, you know, take place in this, like, you know, in the squared circle, so to speak, but without the sort of, you know, the kind of pageantry of like, you know, the sports entertainment aspect of things that was going on the, you know, sort of WWF side of things in my brain. Like that was my experience of professional wrestling before I watched something like New Japan. And so when I saw that there was a different way that these things could be done, and that these stories could be told without, you know, like sort of, you know, being cringy or whatever, I was like, this is really interesting. And the more I started watching it, the more I started to get like really involved in, just, wanting to know everything about it and just, you know, I'm kind of one of those people that I just can't like do anything half-assed. It's all either all or nothing. And so, you know, I went from just like really being an observer and trying to understand the art and the sport of it all to, you know, thinking, you know, I see why I couldn't do this. Like I just, you know, I wanted to try it and I didn't know how I would respond to it, how my body would respond to it. Cause, you know, having spent so many years just like destroying myself in competition and stuff, like I was like, I don't know if I can kind of handle this on top of all of that, you know, but it was just, you know, like I'm sure you've heard many people say just as soon as you sort of get a taste of it, it's like a drug and you have to keep doing it because you just, that high that you get from just, you know, living out your craft and, you know, living out the art of it is incomparable. So, that's kind of like, I mean, that's kind of like a vague, convoluted answer, but, I would say that's kind of how I kind of jumped over into that world. Not saying like I've left the other world, but, you know, I guess, explored this other realm of like, combative performance.
Yeah,
I guess.
because it is funny watching people, again, I mean, a lot of people, their first, you know, foray, I guess, into wrestling is normally WWE or WWF, whenever you started watching or whatever. Like, you know, I've been watching my entire life, and I tell people like, oh yeah, I used to watch